The future is not some far-off science fiction scenario waiting to arrive. It is already embedded in the decisions we make today. Every piece of data collected, every algorithm refined, every cultural shift observed, these are not just signals, they are building blocks of tomorrow's reality. And the leaders who understand this truth are not simply managing the present, they are designing the future. The future is no longer a faraway concept that exists in movies, research labs, or abstract conversations at conferences. It is unfolding in real time all around us. Leaders often make the mistake of thinking about the future as something that will arrive in a few years, giving them enough time to prepare. But that is a dangerous illusion. In reality, the future is embedded in the present, hidden in the technologies we already use, the behaviors we already see, and the decisions we make today. The smartphones in our hands, the algorithms behind our search engines, the data harvested from our daily activities. These are not glimpses of what is to come. They are the infrastructure of the next era. The leaders who fail to recognize this immediacy are left reacting when disruption strikes, while those who embrace it are already shaping what comes next. Consider how quickly our sense of normal has shifted in just the last decade. A single app reshaped how we move through cities, erasing the need for maps, cash, or even car ownership. A social network transformed not only how we communicate, but also how we consume information, challenge authority, and build influence. Entire industries collapsed or reinvented themselves because what once seemed like novelty quickly became expectation. If leaders had waited for the future to arrive before acting, they would have been too late. The real futurists are not those who make bold predictions about flying cars or moon colonies, but those who recognize that the seeds of tomorrow are already germinating today. The practical reality for leaders is this: every decision you make either accelerates or delays your organization's readiness for the world to come. If you invest in outdated systems, cling to legacy models, or prioritize short-term stability over long-term adaptability, you are writing yourself out of the future. On the other hand, if you treat the present as a testing ground for emerging technologies, if you pay attention to the subtle ways your customers' behaviors are shifting, if you look at your workforce not as it is, but as it will need to become, then you are already leading from the future, not just toward it. The mindset shift is subtle but critical. Instead of asking, what will the future look like? The question must become, what present trends already contain the DNA of that future? Artificial intelligence is not a distant force. It is already influencing hiring decisions, marketing campaigns, and supply chains. Remote collaboration is not just a pandemic necessity, it is a blueprint for a borderless workforce. Sustainability is not merely a compliance issue. It is the emerging language of trust between brands and consumers. Each of these is a current reality, not a forecast. Leaders who thrive in this environment understand that the pace of change is now exponential. The time it takes for an idea to move from fringe to mainstream is collapsing. That means hesitation is riskier than boldness. The future is not an event waiting to happen. It is a choice you make every single day. The real question is whether you are willing to see it, act on it, and lead as if it is already here. Data is no longer just a byproduct of business operations. It has become the compass that guides every decision a leader makes. In the past, leadership relied heavily on intuition, experience, and personal judgment. While those qualities still matter, they are no longer sufficient in a world where the volume, speed, and complexity of information exceed human capacity to process. Leaders today must understand that data is not about spreadsheets or dashboards. It is about insight. It is about unlocking the patterns hidden in everyday interactions, transactions, and behaviors to reveal the direction of change before it becomes obvious. Those who ignore this reality are flying blind in a storm of disruption, while those who embrace it gain the ability to navigate uncertainty with precision. Think about how industries that were once stable have been disrupted almost overnight. Traditional retailers that ignored digital footprints and buying behaviors found themselves overtaken by platforms that knew more about customer preferences than they did. Banks that once relied on face-to-face relationships lost ground to fintech firms that used real-time data to personalize services, predict needs, and reduce friction. Even in fields like healthcare, Where expertise has always been paramount, the leaders driving transformation are those who leverage data not just to diagnose illness, but to predict and prevent it before it happens. The lesson is clear: data is no longer just about recording the past. It is the language of the future. But using data as a compass requires more than collecting it. It requires asking the right questions. Too many organizations are drowning in information, yet starving for insight because they lack a culture that understands how to interpret and apply it. Data should not be locked in silos, restricted to analysts, or treated as a technical detail. It should flow through the entire organization, shaping strategy, design, and execution at every level. Leaders must create an environment where teams are trained to think critically about data, where insights are shared across disciplines, and where decision-making is informed not by assumptions but by evidence. At the same time, leaders must recognize that data without ethics is dangerous. The trust of your customers and employees depends on how responsibly you collect, use, and protect information. Transparency is not optional, it is foundational. In an age of algorithms, privacy concerns, and digital surveillance, the true measure of leadership is not how much data you have, but how you use it to create value without eroding trust. The compass works only if the people you lead believe it points to a future that benefits them too. Ultimately, the leaders who succeed will be those who understand that data is not just about efficiency or optimization. It is about vision. It reveals opportunities you might never have considered, risks you might never have noticed, and innovations that could redefine your industry. A leader guided by data is not reactive, but anticipatory, not just managing today's operations, but architecting tomorrow's possibilities. In a world of complexity and rapid change, instinct may still inspire, but data shows the way. Technology does not simply transform industries. It first reshapes the behavior of the people those industries serve. This is why leaders who focus only on operational efficiency or internal systems miss the deeper truth before disruption shows up in financial reports. It is already visible in the way customers live, work, and make decisions. If you want to understand the future of your business, don't just analyze your competitors. Study your customers. Look closely at how their expectations evolve when new tools, platforms, and experiences become part of their daily lives. Those subtle shifts are signals that reveal where the world is heading long before the market catches up. Consider the rise of streaming services. Long before studios realized their traditional release models were under threat, audiences had already embraced the convenience of watching what they wanted, when they wanted, on any device. The same happened in transportation when ride-sharing platforms didn't just introduce new technology, they rewired our patience for waiting, our assumptions about ownership, and our willingness to trust strangers with our safety. In both cases, behavior shifted first, industries adapted later. Leaders who were paying attention to these early signals had the chance to pivot quickly, while others clung to old models until it was too late. This is why the most critical question a leader can ask is not, what technology should we invest in? But how are people changing because of it? For example, artificial intelligence is not just about automation. It's about how it alters decision-making, creativity, and trust. E-commerce is not just about transactions. It's about how it reshapes the psychology of convenience and choice. Remote collaboration is not merely a tool for efficiency. It changes the way people perceive work-life balance, team culture, and even geography. Each of these shifts begins at the level of human behavior and only later cascades into the business models that surround them. To truly anticipate the impact of technology, leaders must learn to observe the world like anthropologists. Pay attention to the tiny details of how people use tools in ways they weren't originally intended. Notice the workarounds, the hacks, the unspoken frustrations, and the unexpected joys. These are the early clues of tomorrow's disruptions. When customers start behaving in ways that defy your business assumptions, don't dismiss it as an anomaly. See it as a preview of what is coming. The real danger is not that technology will advance faster than organizations can keep up. It is that leaders will ignore the behavioral shifts happening right in front of them. By the time a new habit becomes mainstream, the opportunity to lead the change has already passed. The leaders who thrive are those who treat every emerging technology as a lens for studying human behavior, not just a tool for efficiency. In the end, technology is a mirror. It reflects our desires, our impatience, our curiosity, and our need for connection. If you want to see the future, don't look at the machines. Look at the people using them. That is where disruption begins, and that is where true leadership must focus. Agility is no longer a nice-to-have trait for organizations. It is the ultimate competitive advantage in a world where change is accelerating at an exponential pace. In the past, companies could afford to build long-term strategies, execute them steadily, and adjust slowly to market shifts. But that era is gone. Today, disruption can emerge from anywhere: a startup with no legacy systems, a platform with global reach, or even a social movement that changes public expectations overnight. The organizations that survive and thrive are not the ones with the most resources or the longest history. They are the ones that can adapt quickly, pivot decisively, and learn continuously. Agility is not about moving faster for the sake of speed. It is about having the flexibility to rethink assumptions, redesign systems, and reallocate resources in response to new realities. The danger for many leaders lies in the comfort of tradition. "This is how we've always done it" is one of the most destructive sentences in modern business. The truth is that best practices from the past often become blind spots for the future. What worked yesterday may not only fail tomorrow, but may actually prevent you from seeing the opportunities emerging in front of you. Agility means being willing to let go of outdated models, no matter how successful they once were, and creating space for new ways of thinking. It requires humility to admit that the world has changed, and courage to act before certainty arrives. We can see the value of agility in companies that turned crises into opportunities. During times of disruption, such as global pandemics or economic downturns, rigid organizations froze, waiting for stability to return. Agile organizations, on the other hand, reimagined their products, restructured the teams, and experimented with new channels of engagement. They understood that uncertainty is not something to fear. It is a canvas for reinvention. For leaders, agility is not about predicting the unpredictable, but about building a culture that can absorb shocks, learn quickly, and emerge stronger. Agility also requires decentralization of decision-making. In fast-moving environments, waiting for approvals from the top slows down response time and kills innovation. Leaders must empower teams with the autonomy to act, experiment, and make decisions in real time. This shift is less about structure and more about mindset, trust over control, learning over perfection, iteration over rigid planning. By doing so, organizations unlock the collective intelligence of their people and create a dynamic system that adapts faster than any single leader could direct. At its core, agility is not just an operational strategy, but a philosophy of leadership. It means embracing ambiguity, rewarding experimentation, and seeing failure not as a setback, but as feedback. The leaders of the future will not be the ones who cling to stability, but those who can thrive in flux, who can guide their people through change without losing clarity of vision. In a world where disruption is constant, agility is not simply about survival. It is the foundation of relevance. The question is not whether change will come, but how prepared you are to bend with it, adapt to it, and ultimately use it to your advantage. As powerful as technology has become, and as much as artificial intelligence, automation, and algorithms are reshaping the business landscape, the essence of leadership remains deeply human. Machines may be able to process vast amounts of data, optimize decisions at lightning speed, and even mimic creativity in surprising ways, but they cannot replicate empathy, vision, or the ability to inspire. In fact, the more advanced our tools become, the more valuable those human qualities are. The leaders who will truly stand out in the future are not those who simply master technology, but those who use it as a stage to amplify their humanity. In an AI-driven world, the human touch is not just an advantage, it is a necessity. Consider the relationship between leaders and their teams. Employees today are not only motivated by salaries or promotions, they seek purpose, meaning, and connection. They want to know that their work contributes to something larger than themselves. No algorithm can provide that sense of belonging. It comes from a leader who can listen, empathize, and articulate a vision that resonates. When change is constant and uncertainty feels overwhelming, people look to leaders not for technical answers, but for reassurance, perspective, and courage. That is why emotional intelligence has become just as important as strategic intelligence. This human dimension extends beyond the workplace. Customers, too, are increasingly drawn to brands that feel authentic and human. They value transparency, ethics, and trust in a way that goes beyond price or convenience. While AI can personalize recommendations or predict needs, it cannot build trust on its own. That requires leaders who are willing to be accountable, to show vulnerability when necessary, and to make decisions grounded in values rather than short-term gains. Technology may allow businesses to scale globally, but it is the human voice that creates loyalty and connection. The paradox of the future is that as machines get smarter, the qualities that make us most human, compassion, imagination, intuition, become more important, not less. Leaders who ignore this truth risk creating organizations that feel efficient but soulless, productive but uninspiring. And in a world where talent and customers have endless options, soulless organizations will struggle to retain either. The leaders of tomorrow must therefore strike a balance. They must embrace technology for its strengths while doubling down on the uniquely human aspects of leadership that no machine can replace. This is not about resisting technology. It is about using it to augment human potential. AI can free leaders from routine decisions so they can focus on creativity. Automation can handle repetitive tasks so teams can concentrate on innovation. Data can illuminate opportunities, but it still takes human imagination to pursue them. The future of leadership is not man versus machine, but man with machine, guided by human values and vision. In the end, leadership in an AI-driven world is about being the anchor of humanity in a sea of technology. The true measure of a leader will not be how well they understand algorithms, but how well they inspire people to believe, to trust, and to create a future worth living in. The future does not belong to those who simply refine existing systems or optimize what already works. It belongs to those who can reimagine what has never been done before. Incremental improvements may have been enough in a slower world, but in an era where disruption is constant and competition can appear overnight. Small adjustments only delay the inevitable. True leadership is about more than efficiency. It is about vision. It is about daring to ask bold questions, challenge assumptions, and create possibilities that others cannot yet see. Optimization is about getting better at the past. Reimagination is about building the future. The danger for many leaders is that they become trapped by success. When a business model delivers profits, the instinct is to protect and polish it rather than question it. Yet history shows that every industry, no matter how dominant, eventually faces reinvention. Kodak perfected film at the very moment the world shifted to digital. Blockbuster optimized late fees, while streaming quietly rewrote the rules of entertainment. Leaders who only optimize end up building stronger cages around themselves, while those who reimagine break free and define entirely new landscapes. Reimagination begins with curiosity. It requires asking, what if, instead of what is? What if work was no longer tied to a location? What if products could adapt in real time to customer needs? What if sustainability was not an afterthought, but the foundation of innovation? These kinds of questions open doors to opportunities that optimization alone will never reveal. They force leaders to step outside of their industry, playbooks, and consider the world through the lens of possibility rather than limitation. This mindset also demands courage, because reimagination often looks unreasonable at first. Radical ideas rarely make sense to everyone in the beginning. There will always be skeptics who prefer the safety of what is known. But leadership is not about consensus. It is about conviction. The leaders who shape the future are those who are willing to invest in ideas that seem risky, to build prototypes that may fail, and to pursue visions that others dismiss as unrealistic. The irony is that what feels unreasonable today often becomes inevitable tomorrow. At the same time, reimagination is not about abandoning practicality. It is about blending vision with execution. Bold ideas must still be grounded in strategy, supported by data, and driven by purpose. The difference is that they are not confined by precedent. They create new categories, redefine value, and shift culture. When leaders commit to reimagining rather than optimizing, they create organizations that are not just resilient, but transformative. They don't wait for the future to arrive, they invent it. Ultimately, the future rewards those who dare to dream bigger than their circumstances, who refuse to be limited by what has already been done. Optimization makes you efficient for today, but imagination makes you relevant for tomorrow. And in a world where change is the only constant, relevance is the most powerful currency a leader can possess.